So I have a conversation quite often with PMP students, and that is that the PMP didn't actually teach you risk management. I know because I teach the PMP exam prep course. And in that course, I can tell you that I give the most in-depth risk management explanation. But generally, when you take the PMP, it's only teaching you vocabulary around risk management. And it's teaching you the high-level overview of how it works. But today, I want to show you the difference of how risk management is taught during the PMP and what it looks like actually when you apply it in real life. So by the end of this video, I want you to know the skills that employers, that your teams are looking for and what they're paying for. And that's going to get you, through the long run when it comes to applying risk management in your projects. So let's jump into this. So when people are trying to pass PMP, it's an accomplishment. It truly is. Anyone who passes that exam, I commend you. But it only proves that you actually know the process. Because the PMP is a very large exam. It covers a very large amount of material. And that's why we have additional certifications like the PMI-RMP, the PMI-SP for scheduling professional, and other additional certifications that sit out there. That's because the PMP doesn't actually prove that you can use a lot of the material that it teaches. And that space between knowing the processes and how to exercise the judgment, that is what I like to call a judgment gap. And we all have it when we first earn the certification. It's where good PMs stall and where great ones tend to get promoted and they tend to move forward faster. And in about 3 minutes from now, in skill 3, I'm going to give you the exact line to explain why most risk training never closes the gap that we need as project managers. In a quick roadmap of where we're going today, I'm going to go over 5 skills. Each one just shows what you can use in the real world that is showing up in job requirements. And it's just going to show where you can start building up as a risk manager and as a project manager in general. So let's jump into skill 1, translating a risk into a language that the executive can actually act on. So your PMP gave you the information on how to build a risk register. You have the columns, the scores, the owners, the works, everything that we need to build out the risk register, the risk plan. But here's what it skips. It skips how to walk into the steering committee and make the CFO move money. Knowing the process, knowing how to build a risk register, and knowing how to move the CFO is not the same skill. One's documentation, the other one is persuasion under pressure. And you might be thinking, yeah, but I send a weekly status report. Isn't that communication? And that's exactly the trap that I want you to get past. Reporting a risk and framing a decision are 2 different jobs. And executives only respond to, really, the second one. Poor risk communication directly causes poor decisions, not poor documentation. Poor communication is what impacts leadership's ability to actually make decisions. And risk management is all about making decisions. And the dollars that come with those decisions follow the words that you can give to your leadership. So I want you to think about the so what reframe around what you talk about with your risks. Every risk you raise, run it through 2 questions before you say anything out loud. So what and now what? So what is going to force the business impact? Dollars, dates, scope. Now what is going to force you to give the decision that you're asking for. Stop reporting stuff like there's a 40% chance that the vendor may slip, and start framing it like there's a 40% chance the vendor slips in 2 weeks. That's roughly $80,000 in penalties. And I need a decision to use the backup supplier by next Thursday. Same risks. One's going to get nodded at. The other one is going to move funding. And if you think framing the risk is the hard part, wait until you find out why nobody on your team will tell you the risk even exists in the first place. Because that's skill number 2. And that is building a culture where people actually surface the bad news. The PMP hands you the tools that you really need here. You cover the Delphi technique, brainstorming, nominal group technique. These are all solid identification methods. But what it never teaches you is the thing that makes any of them work. And that comes down to psychological safety of the members that you're working with, because a risk register is only as honest as the people who are feeding it. Let me name something you've probably already lived. Everybody on your project has a risk register, but nobody actually has truth that sits within it. The real risks that are sitting out there, stuff like the vendor that everyone quietly distrusts, The scope, the sponsor keeps changing. You know, all those hallway conversations, the stuff that's not documented, but people talk about. And this is why I like to talk a lot about risk register theater. This is the artifact that looks healthy while the project is quietly on fire and not actually getting anywhere. If you look closely at anything that talks about risk identification, you're going to notice something. It keeps reaching for anonymous techniques, anonymous Delphi rounds, silent idea generation. And there's a reason for that. Those methods exist specifically to beat things like groupthink. And it helps pull in the quiet voices, the people who see risks, but won't say them in front of a crowd or in front of the boss. This is something I teach in my project risk management risk workshops, is that I want people to, yes, get in a room, get with a group of individuals, but then start identifying the ones that you need to go talk to individually, because they're going to be the ones that have those unknowns that are sitting out there that they know, but you just need to get out of them. So your action this week is, during your next identification session, do some anonymous first risk identification. Before anyone speaks, every person privately submits their top 3 risks. No names, just risks that you can discuss with your team. You do this and you're going to be stunned about what you get on paper and what was never said out loud in any other meeting. And that one change is the difference between a register that's theater and one that's actually intelligent and focused on actually finding the risks that can hurt your project. Now, surfacing risks is only one thing. Knowing which one to bet on is the harder part, especially when your data is thin. And that's a completely different muscle when it comes to risk identification and just risk management in general. And that's one that the 2026 Pulse of the Profession calls out in our next skill. So skill 3 is going to be judgment under uncertainty. Your PMP, it gives you the probability and impact matrix. High goes red, low is a green risk. It's clean. But here's what it skips. Knowing which risk to bet on is, not always clear when you don't have all the data, especially if the clock is running and the matrix that you have built that you're trusting on, it hands you 3 reds and no clear winner. So the matrix tells you the risks are serious, but it does not tell you what to do at 90% uncertainty with a sponsor staring directly at you. And this comes out specifically in that 2026 Pulse of the Profession, where it talks about decision-making under uncertainty. And this is a core requirement, something that we all need to understand. It's not a nice to have. It's a core, something that we all need to work through is uncertainty. Now, here's something I see often and why risk training tends to fail for a lot of individuals, especially some of the stuff that I know I've taken because I've seen it out there as well, is that it fails not because it skips the tools, but because it teaches tools without the context. It doesn't teach the positioning and the judgment and how to use them all wisely on your projects. The tools are not the problem. It's the wrapper around the tools that tends not to be taught. So here's something that I think you can use the next time you're staring at not a lot of data, but you need to make a decision. Force yourself to answer 3 things out loud. First, what is my confidence level right now? Is it low, medium, high? 2, what's the cost of being wrong here versus the cost of waiting for more information? And 3, what's the smallest reversible step that I can take right now? Judgment isn't a gift. It's not a gift that's something, we're all born with. It needs reps. Just like going to the gym, you need to get reps on developing your judgment. And those reps come from those 3 questions. And here's why, again, you need those reps. Because even with perfect judgment, your own brain tends to work against you sometimes. We all know that people who are most confident sometimes in a room, the ones that stand up there the strongest, are a lot of times wrong. And that's skill 4 that we're going to talk about here in a second. And it's something that a lot of people tend not to talk about, and they don't talk about it correctly if they do. Skill 4 is spotting and countering cognitive biasness. If you're in my PMP exam prep courses, I tend to talk about these a lot, especially when it comes to answering the exam questions. But we need to think about these also when it comes to our projects and project risk management, because things like behavioral economics are not directly on the exam, but it's one thing that actually can blow up your estimates when it comes to what you're working on. It's not talking about bad math. We're talking about a biased brain. So 4 things I want you to watch out for is, first up, optimism bias. We assume it's going to get better than it is, or than it will right now in the future. And next, we have the planning fallacy. This is where we underestimate how long everything takes. And we do it like every single time. Even when we've been burned before, we lean on our own understandings and not on the data we have in front of us, which leads us into the third one, anchoring. This is the first number that is set in the room, and that number ends up hijacking every number after it. And then the last but not least, one of my favorites to try to get teams to overcome is groupthink. This is when the team converges on a comfortable answer instead of the correct one. So here's the part about all this that should unsettle you a little bit. There's a guy named Bent Flyvberg. I probably didn't say his name right, but he studies why big projects fail, mega projects. And he found that people in power, the senior leaders, the sponsors, they tend to be the most susceptible to these biases that we just talked about. And they tend to be more optimistic about risks instead of looking at them with a little bit more caution. So let that land for your role as a project manager. The person with the most authority over your project is often most overconfident about it. And this is why we call it power biasness. In my background, before I ever became a project manager, while I was working on my undergraduate degree, I studied sociology. Sociology is all about group behavior. Why smart people in rooms make dumb collective calls. And that lens is almost always about, people not prepping for what the world is about to bring for them, because they teach one thing and then everyone follows along. So in your PMP, you're taught a matrix, you follow with it, but you stop there. But to fix what we need in all our organizations, especially within project risk management, is to assign an independent challenger. I learned about this in the Marine Corps when we had red cells, people who challenged everything we worked on. They provided us insights. They found the holes in our plans. So this could be a team or one person who's formally empowered, who has the job to review and poke holes in your plan. Their goal is not to rubber stamp things. They're not there to be polite. They're there to attack your plan. And if you do this and you rotate it every project, so that way no one becomes too cynical at their job, you're going to develop a way of just really developing solid risk management in all your projects and really combating groupthink. And once you can see all these biasness and you can start attacking them, there's one more skill, the one that turns all of this from opinion into hard numbers for your sponsor. And that last skill is actually running quantitative analysis, not just giving it a name. On the PMP, you never actually calculate anything for like a Monte Carlo simulation. And the book on the failure of risk management proves all of this, that you recognize the right answer in a multiple choice question, but you don't know how to sit down and actually do quantitative risk analysis. Passing an exam does not mean that you're fluent in this critical process for all project managers. Because yes, qualitative risk analysis is a must do. You have to get that done. Quantitative says that you can skip it if you don't have the time, the resources, the information you need. But as I teach in my RMP courses, there's always a way to do some form of quantitative risk analysis. And that's what actually moves you up the ladder in risk management. The shift from saying that this project will cost $500,000, where you're going to actually pull out the false confidence in that number and say that there's a 70% chance we come in under $550,000 and a 10% chance we blow past $600,000. That second sentence is a different professional. That's someone speaking in probability and confidence intervals, the language that executives and PMOs actually trust with the real money when it comes to the projects. And that right there is exactly the gap that my PMI-RMP exam prep courses are built to close. My whole goal between all 5 of these is that I don't want you drilling vocabulary, but I want you to have the skills to actually do risk management the right way in your projects. So let's connect the dots. Everything I just walked you through, framing decisions, building honest cultures, judgment under uncertainty, beating out your own biasness, and speaking in probability in using quantitative risk analysis, none of that is built heavily into the PMP, but all of it is what your employers in your projects actually need. So the truth that it comes down to is precisely around the PMI-RMP. It's a critical credential that proves that you have the judgment. And this is why I teach the PMI-RMP, because the PMP is going to get you in the room. It is what on 95% of the applications out there, it says in the job description that you need the PMP. But the RMP is going to make you the person in the room that actually gets people to listen to you when things go sideways. And that's why I like to talk about the certification stack. You get the PMP first, then you get the RMP as a specialization. It's a deliberate career moves for project managers to make. And if you're ready to build these 5 skills the right way, my PMI-RMP exam prep courses with me are going to help you walk through how to apply them to make you exam ready and job ready. And I usually do this in small groups with real access to me, not recorded lectures where you start and finish and never actually learn anything on how to apply it in your projects. The link is going to be in the description. I'm going to pin it down in the comments. The process is what gets you certified. Judgment is what gets you hired. 44 Risk PM out.